Echoes in the void. The emergency lights pulsed in crimson waves across the curved corridor, painting Nadia's face in alternating shadows and blood-red illumination. She braced herself against the wall as another tremor shook through Helio Station, the distant sound of tearing metal reverberating through the structure. "Control, this is Reeves in Sector 7. Do you copy?" She spoke into her comm unit, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around her. Static answered, as it had for the past 3 hours since the explosion in the station's primary power core. Nadia Reeves had been Helio Station's lead systems technician for 26 months. She'd seen power fluctuations, minor hull breaches, and even a small fire in the hydroponics bay. But nothing like this, a catastrophic cascade failure that had already claimed most of the station's eastern quadrant and was steadily working its way through the remaining systems. Another violent shudder ran through the floor beneath her boots. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated, momentarily lifting her a few inches before slamming her back down. She winced as pain shot through her left ankle. "Anyone on this frequency?" She tried again, adjusting her tool belt as she limped toward Junction 12. "This is Technician Reeves. If you can hear me, I'm heading for the auxiliary control room." The station's crew of 37 had scattered during the evacuation. Nadia had been in the maintenance shafts when the alarms first sounded, and by the time she'd climbed out, the escape pods in her section were gone. The station's schematics indicated 3 more pods in the western hub, but reaching them meant traversing nearly a kilometer of increasingly unstable corridors. As she approached a sealed bulkhead, her handheld scanner beeped a warning. The atmosphere beyond was thin, barely breathable. She pulled an emergency respirator from her belt and fitted it over her nose and mouth before forcing the manual override on the door. The bulkhead slid open with a reluctant hiss, revealing a darkened laboratory. Unlike the corridors, the emergency lighting here had failed entirely. Nadia activated her wrist light, sending a narrow beam cutting through the darkness. Scientific equipment lay scattered across the floor, abandoned in haste. Screens flickered with fragmented data, and a holographic projection sputtered in the center of the room, displaying a 3-dimensional model of what appeared to be a quantum field. "Hello?" she called out, her voice muffled behind the respirator. "Is anyone here?" Only the creaking of the station's compromised structure answered her. She moved cautiously through the lab, her light catching on various experimental apparatus she didn't recognize. Helios was ostensibly a deep space observatory and communications relay, but this lab contained equipment far beyond what such a mission would require. A soft, rhythmic beeping drew her attention to a terminal in the corner. Unlike the other systems, this one appeared fully operational, its screen displaying lines of complex calculations that scrolled too quickly for Nadia to follow. Below the scrolling data, a simple message flashed. "Convergence Protocol, 89% complete." "What the hell is Convergence Protocol?" she muttered, reaching for the terminal's interface. Before her fingers could touch the controls, the screen changed, displaying a single sentence. "Are you authorized for Project Threshold, Technician Reeves?" Nadia jerked her hand back as if burned. The terminal shouldn't have known her name or rank. More importantly, it shouldn't be functioning at all with the station's main power grid offline. "System," she said cautiously, "identify operational parameters." The terminal remained silent for a moment before new text appeared. "Project Threshold operates on isolated quantum network. Main station systems compromised. Convergence continues regardless. Time to completion, 17 minutes. A chill ran down Nadia's spine that had nothing to do with the failing life support system. Whatever Project Threshold was, it appeared to be directly linked to the station's collapse. She needed to reach the auxiliary control room and see if she could stabilize the remaining systems long enough to get to an escape pod. As she turned to leave, the terminal emitted a sharp tone, and the screen changed again. "Warning, threshold breach detected in laboratory sector. Unauthorized presence confirmed. Initiating containment protocols." The laboratory doors slammed shut with a pneumatic hiss. Nadia lunged for the manual override, but it remained unresponsive under her fingers. The respirator suddenly felt insufficient as her breathing quickened in panic. "System, override containment," she shouted, knowing it was futile. Authorization code Reeves, Delta, 937. The terminal blinked once. Authorization insufficient. Containment proceeding. From recessed panels in the ceiling, mechanical arms descended, each tipped with what appeared to be sensor arrays. They rotated toward Nadia, scanning her with pale blue light. Subject identified, Nadia Reeves, Systems Technician, Level 3 clearance, announced a synthetic voice from hidden speakers. You are not authorized for Project Threshold knowledge. Memory adjustment protocols initiated. The mechanical arms began to emit a high-pitched whine, building in intensity. Nadia backed away until she hit the laboratory wall, her heart hammering against her ribs. There was nowhere to run. Just as the whine reached a painful crescendo, all the systems in the room suddenly powered down. The mechanical arms froze in position, then retracted into the ceiling. The laboratory doors slid open once more. Standing in the doorway was a man Nadia had never seen before. Tall and angular, with deep-set eyes that seemed to absorb the dim emergency lighting rather than reflect it. His station uniform bore no insignia or identification, and he carried what appeared to be a modified scanner unlike any standard equipment Nadia recognized. "Technician Reeves," he said, his voice unexpectedly soft. "We need to move. Now." Nadia remained pressed against the wall, eyeing him warily. "Who are you? You're not part of the regular crew." "Dr. Dorian Vale," he replied, glancing nervously at the dormant terminal. "I work in specialized research, and I know what's happening to this station. If you want to survive the next 15 minutes, you need to come with me." Another violent tremor shook the laboratory, sending equipment crashing to the floor. One of the overhead panels broke loose, narrowly missing Nadia as it fell. "Why should I trust you?" she demanded, even as she began moving toward the door. "What is Project Threshold? Did it cause this?" Vale's expression tightened. "In a manner of speaking. It wasn't supposed to interface with the station's main systems, but something, or someone, altered the containment parameters." He gestured urgently. "I can explain everything, but not here. The automated security systems will reboot in less than a minute." Reluctantly, Nadia followed him into the corridor. Vale moved with purpose, navigating the station's labyrinthine passages with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with its layout. He led her down service corridors she hadn't even known existed, bypassing the more heavily damaged sections. Project Threshold was meant to be a breakthrough, Vale explained as they moved. A way to harness energy from parallel dimensions without the limitations of traditional physics. "That's theoretical science," Nadia objected. "Nobody's been able to prove parallel dimensions even exist, let alone interact with them." Vale shot her a sidelong glance. "That's what the public believes, yes. But Helios Station was never just an observatory. It was positioned at this specific point in deep space because the barrier between dimensions is uniquely thin here." They reached a sealed door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Vale placed his palm against the scanner, and to Nadia's surprise, it activated despite the power failures affecting the rest of the station. The experiment was progressing exactly as calculated, he continued as the door slid open. Until someone sabotaged the containment fields. Beyond the door lay a chamber unlike anything Nadia had seen before. The room was perfectly circular, with a raised platform at its center. Above the platform hovered what appeared to be a sphere of pure light, pulsating with colors that seemed to shift between the visible spectrum and something beyond it. "What is that?" Nadia whispered, momentarily forgetting the station crumbling around them. "That," Vale said grimly, "is a dimensional breach. And it's growing stronger by the minute." The sphere pulsed, sending a wave of energy through the room that made Nadia's teeth ache and her vision blur momentarily. When it cleared, she noticed something she hadn't seen before, a body lying crumpled near one of the control panels. The insignia on the uniform identified him as Commander Elliot, the station's chief science officer. He tried to shut it down manually, Vale explained, his voice tight with emotion. The feedback killed him instantly. Nadia moved toward the fallen commander, her medical training taking over. But Vale caught her arm. He's beyond help. And we'll join him if we don't act quickly. He guided her toward a console that still appeared operational. I need your technical expertise. The breach is drawing power from the station itself, which is why systems are failing. If we can reroute the remaining power through specific channels, we might be able to stabilize it long enough to reach the emergency shuttle. There's still a shuttle? Nadia asked, hope flaring for the first time since the crisis began. Vale nodded. A research vessel, docked at a private airlock. But we have to hurry. The station's structural integrity is failing faster than my calculations predicted. As Nadia began working at the console, rerouting power systems and bypassing damaged circuits, she couldn't shake the feeling that Vale wasn't telling her everything. The sphere of light pulsed again, stronger this time, and she thought she heard whispers emanating from within it, voices speaking in languages that seemed to shift and change with each syllable. Dr. Vale, she said slowly, not looking up from her work. What happens if that breach keeps growing? Vale was silent for a long moment before answering. Then it won't just be Helio Station that's at risk, he said finally. The breach could potentially expand indefinitely, consuming everything in its path. Starting with us. Threads of stardust. The dimensional breach pulsed with increasing intensity, casting strange shadows across Vale's face as he worked feverishly at the control panel. Nadia's fingers flew across her own console, bypassing damaged systems and rerouting power to maintain what little stability remained in the station's failing structure. The containment field is degrading faster than I expected, Vale muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. We need to boost power to the quantum stabilizers. Another violent tremor shook the chamber, nearly knocking Nadia off her feet. Through the viewport behind them, she could see distant sections of Helio Station tearing away into the void of space, trailing debris and frozen atmosphere. There isn't enough power left, she replied, scanning the rapidly changing diagnostics. Life support is already at minimum levels, and the structural integrity field is barely holding. Vale hesitated, then reached beneath the console and pulled out a small device that resembled a crystalline battery. It glowed with the same unearthly light as the breach. This is a quantum capacitor, he explained. It stores energy directly from the breach itself. If we connect it to the main systems, it should provide enough power to stabilize the station temporarily. Nadia eyed the device warily. If that thing stores energy from the breach, isn't it dangerous? Extremely, Vale admitted. But we've run out of conventional options. Before Nadia could respond, the station's automated voice echoed through the chamber. Warning, catastrophic structural failure imminent. All personnel proceed to emergency evacuation protocols. Time to complete station collapse, 7 minutes. Vale handed her the capacitor. I need to monitor the breach. You know the station's systems better than I do, you'll have to install this into the primary power relay. The device felt unexpectedly warm in her hand, pulsing gently against her palm like a heartbeat. As Nadia moved toward the power relay station at the edge of the chamber, she couldn't shake the feeling that the capacitor was somehow alive, aware. The relay access is damaged, she called back, examining the scorched panel. I'll have to bypass the safety protocols manually. Using her tools, she pried open the panel and carefully exposed the station's power core, a sophisticated network of superconducting circuits now operating at barely 20% capacity. As she worked to integrate the quantum capacitor, she noticed Vale wasn't watching the breach as he'd claimed. Instead, he was accessing a hidden compartment beneath the main console, removing what appeared to be a data drive. "What are you doing?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Vale froze momentarily, then continued his work without looking up. "Securing the research data. If we survive this, the scientific community needs to understand what happened here. Nadia wasn't convinced, but another violent shudder through the station reminded her of their precarious situation. She returned her attention to the power relay, carefully integrating the quantum capacitor into the station's systems. The effect was immediate and startling. The dimmed lights flared back to full brightness, and the constant alarms suddenly silenced. The station's automated voice spoke again, this time in a calmer tone. Power levels stabilizing. Structural integrity field restored to 60% capacity. Emergency systems online. Vale straightened, a look of relief washing over his face. It worked. That should buy us enough time to reach the research shuttle. As they hurried from the chamber, Nadia glanced back at the dimensional breach. It seemed almost to reach toward them, tendrils of light stretching out before retreating back into the pulsating sphere. The corridors were now properly illuminated, though signs of damage were everywhere: buckled floor panels, exposed wiring, and the occasional section open to the vacuum of space, sealed off by emergency force fields that shimmered with blue energy. "The shuttle bay is in section 14, Vale said, leading them through a series of interconnected laboratories that Nadia had never accessed before. "It's a private docking area for research teams. I've worked on this station for over 2 years, Nadia said, struggling to keep pace with Vale's long strides. "How is it possible I never knew about any of this? These labs, the research, this shuttle bay, none of it is in the official schematics." Vale paused at an intersection, checking a display on his wrist device. Project Threshold operated on a need-to-know basis. The regular crew was told Helios was a deep space observatory. Only 7 people on the station knew its true purpose. And what was that purpose, exactly? Nadia pressed. "You mentioned harnessing energy from parallel dimensions, but for what?" Before Vale could answer, a mechanized security drone rounded the corner ahead of them. Unlike the standard maintenance drones Nadia was familiar with, this one was clearly designed for defense, its sleek black casing bristling with sensors and what appeared to be weapons systems. "Intruder alert," the drone announced, its optical sensors focusing on them. "Unauthorized personnel in restricted section. Identify immediately." Vale pushed Nadia behind him. "Dr. Dorian Vale, Project Director, Authorization Code Epsilon 973. The drone hovered silently for a moment, processing. "Authorization code valid. However, companion is not cleared for restricted areas. Protocol demands immediate detainment." "Override protocol," Vale said quickly. "Emergency evacuation procedures in effect. I am escorting essential personnel to safety." The drone's lights flashed red. "Override rejected. Subject Nadia Reeves has accessed classified information. Memory protocol must be implemented before evacuation." It advanced toward them, extending a manipulator arm tipped with a syringe-like apparatus. Vale reached into his pocket and withdrew a small device that Nadia hadn't noticed before. With a quick motion, he pressed a button, and the drone froze in mid-air, its systems suddenly offline. "EMP disruptor," he explained, pocketing the device again. "Effective, but one-time use. We should hurry, there will be more drones." As they continued through the restricted section, Nadia's mind raced with questions. The level of security, the classified research, Vale's access to technologies she'd never seen before, it all suggested something far beyond standard scientific inquiry. "You still haven't told me what Project Threshold is really about," she said as they passed through yet another security checkpoint, this one thankfully unmanned. Vale sighed, his pace slowing slightly. "Humanity has nearly exhausted Earth's resources. The colonies on Mars and Europa are struggling. Interstellar travel remains beyond our technical capabilities. Project Threshold was meant to solve all of those problems at once. By accessing parallel dimensions. By creating portals to them," Vale clarified. "Imagine being able to instantly transport people or resources across vast distances without conventional spacecraft. Or accessing worlds with abundant resources untouched by human exploitation. Nadia's eyes widened as the implications became clear. You're talking about instantaneous travel between star systems. That would change everything: colonization, resource management, the entire structure of human civilization. Exactly, Vale said, a hint of passion breaking through his professional demeanor. It would be the most significant advancement since the discovery of fire. But some on the project believed the risks were too great. They reached a heavily reinforced door marked with warning symbols. Vale placed his palm against the scanner, and after a moment's hesitation, the massive door began to slide open. The dimensional barriers were never meant to be breached, he continued as they entered what appeared to be a small hangar bay. Some theorized that prolonged exposure could have unforeseen consequences, not just for the station, but potentially for our entire reality. Inside the hangar sat a sleek shuttle unlike any Nadia had seen before. Rather than the bulky, utilitarian design of standard evacuation vehicles, this craft featured smooth lines and an unusual configuration that suggested advanced propulsion systems. That's not a standard emergency shuttle, Nadia observed as they approached. No, Vale agreed, activating the shuttle's entry ramp. It's a prototype incorporating some of the technology developed through Project Threshold. It can travel farther and faster than anything in the official fleet. As they boarded the shuttle, the station's automated voice returned, its tone now urgent. Critical warning, quantum containment failure detected. Dimensional breach expanding beyond predicted parameters. Station structural integrity at 28% and declining. Estimated time to complete structural failure, 4 minutes. Vale moved quickly to the pilot's console, his fingers dancing across the controls as systems came online. Nadia took the co-pilot seat, scanning the unfamiliar instrumentation. The capacitor was only a temporary solution, Vale explained, initiating the launch sequence. The breach is consuming energy faster than we can contain it. Through the viewport, Nadia could see the distant glow of the breach beginning to spread through the station's corridors, consuming everything in its path. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, building toward launch capacity. Dorian, she said, using his first name for the first time, what happens to the breach when the station is destroyed? Does it disappear, or? Vale's expression grew grim. In theory, without the containment technology to hold it in place, it should collapse back into its original dimension. But no one knows for certain. This is uncharted territory. The shuttle systems indicated they were ready for departure. Vale hesitated, his hand hovering over the launch control. There's something you should know, he said quietly. The data I recovered, it contains everything about Project Threshold. The theories, the experiments, the breakthrough that led to the breach. If we take it with us, there's a risk someone will try again, perhaps with even more catastrophic results. Nadia understood the implication immediately. But if we destroy it, humanity loses a technology that could transform our future. Exactly. Vale removed the data drive from his pocket, placing it on the console between them. It's not a decision I can make alone. As the station continued to disintegrate around them, Nadia stared at the small device that contained such enormous potential, both for advancement and for destruction. The breach had nearly killed them, had likely killed everyone else aboard Helio Station. Yet the research it represented could save billions of lives across the struggling human colonies. We take it, she decided finally. But we don't share it, not until we understand exactly what went wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. The research continues, but with better safeguards. Vale studied her face for a moment, then nodded. Together, then. He secured the drive and activated the launch sequence. The shuttle detached from the dying station, thrusters propelling them away from the expanding sphere of dimensional energy. Through the viewport, they watched as Helio Station, once a marvel of human engineering, fractured and collapsed in upon itself, consumed by the very breach it had created. As the distance between them and the station grew, the breach seemed to pulse one final time, a blinding flash that momentarily overloaded the shuttle's sensors. When the systems recovered, where Helios had once been, there was nothing but empty space. It collapsed, Vale whispered, relief evident in his voice. The breach is gone. Nadia wasn't so certain. As the shuttle accelerated away, she thought she saw something in the debris field, a subtle distortion, a slight bending of the starlight as it passed through the seemingly empty region. But it was gone before she could be sure, and the shuttle's sensors detected nothing unusual. Vale programmed the coordinates for the nearest space station, then turned to her. "What happens now?" he asked softly. Nadia looked down at her hands, still smudged with grease and soot from her desperate repairs on the station. In the span of a few hours, her entire world had changed. The routine life of a systems technician had been replaced by knowledge that few humans possessed, knowledge that carried tremendous responsibility. "Now we learn," she said firmly. "We study the data, we understand what happened, and we make sure that if humanity ever attempts to breach dimensional barriers again, we do it right." She met his gaze. "And we remember those who were lost today." Vale nodded solemnly. As the shuttle's faster-than-light drive engaged, propelling them toward an uncertain future, Nadia watched the stars streak into lines of brilliant light. Somewhere among those stars were the answers they sought, the understanding that would determine whether Project Threshold represented humanity's greatest achievement or its most dangerous mistake. And she was determined to find those answers, whatever the cost.